Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's episode of Trending, brought to you in association with a brand new range of Ickonic coffee. Head over to shop.ickonic.com and use the code TRENDING. You get 10% off. Jay, what's our first story today, mate?
First story, mate, is following on from yesterday. We spoke about the fallout or potential fallout from the White House press conference, or shall we say, cinema, theatre, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Couple of days after, obviously, you had the summit here in Europe, which Europe committed to giving more money to Ukraine, more loans, when the infrastructure here in the UK is devastated and things are falling apart. We're still giving them 2.3 billion, I believe.
I think he gave them 4 billion over 2 days.
Excellent. Fantastic. Very, very good negotiator, Zelensky, clearly. But yeah, so we're following on from that. The US now have pulled military aid, which kind of ties into what we were talking about yesterday, that Europe is now going to be pushed even further towards the justification for a European army, which we know is their plan. Do you think that this is a dummy being thrown, or do you think this is part of the plan?
I think it's part of the plan. I think at the end of the day, the plan has been for a long time to move power to the east. We've seen that happening over the last few decades in terms of the emergence of BRICS, of China, of Russia as huge economic superpowers, while the West kind of, falters intentionally. Starmer, the guy that sounds like Zippy, has kind of, it's quite funny because we were speaking about this yesterday, in terms of 1984, freedom is slavery and war is peace and all this kind of stuff.
Ignorance is intelligence, or whatever it was.
And his quote was, what was it?
Peace through strength.
That was it. Sorry, my mind went blank then.
Peace through strength.
Peace through strength, which was distinctly 1984.
Very.
And if anyone's ever seen him on a punch bag, they'll know that there isn't that much strength there. He then said yesterday, he's talking about boots on the ground now. So British soldiers on the ground in Ukraine. So
not him, obviously.
Obviously not him. So as if we're not in the war already by, sending them the Tomahawk missiles and all that kind of stuff, and sending them 4 billion over 2 days, even though, like you say, you can go for a paddle in the potholes around my way. We're now going to have boots on the ground. And it's one of those things that I've been trying to talk about for a while, and we've been saying it for a while, that if I was going to destroy a nation, I would destroy its energy infrastructure.
Tick.
I would destroy its food production.
Yeah.
Tick.
Yep.
And another thing I would destroy actually is I'd destroy its morale. I mean, I feel a little bit like that myself when I look at Starmer and the things that come out of his mouth, and the young boys and girls that are going to be sent to their deaths as a result of this man and the people that own him.
You've only got to walk around any town and city across the country to see the morale, and it's dark, man.
It's a dark country.
Dark, it really is.
It's a dark place. And we were talking before we came on air, where I basically said to Jay, when you look back at World War II, and you look back at the Gulf War, well, both of them, and look at the Falklands War, this whole kind of British, we're going to war, we're going to fight the Germans, we're going to beat that nasty Hitler, we're going to go and Malvinas, what are you talking about? It's the Falklands. Does anybody out there think we can beat the Russians?
No. Does anyone want to?
There's not a single person, even those with the Ukraine flag in bios, which, by the way, should be the first on the front line. That should be a prerequisite. Do any of you think that we can beat Russia? And the answer is no. So what's the point? So why are we cheering it on? Why are we allowing it? So we can get absolutely battered.
Well, yeah, it'd be all over. Again, you're talking already in the conflict that's happening in Ukraine at the moment, World War II levels of deaths in terms of casualties. I think it's around 700,000 so far this year, I believe. That might be a bit over the top, but I feel like I've heard that the last couple of days on the Ukrainian side alone.
It's insane.
It's absolutely insane numbers. And what's bizarre is if you look back through kind of what you would consider to be recent history, the party on the left, the Democrats, the Labour Party, the Liberal parties and all that, were supposedly the parties of peace. They were supposedly the parties that didn't want war. And it was those right-wing Republican conservatives that were hard right and, we want conflict, we want this. It's the other way around now.
Yeah. It changed with Blair. Let's have it right.
It's mental. The people in the, like the Ukraine flags in the bio, they've probably got a, pride flag in their bio as well and all of that, and a Just Stop Oil flag too. But they're supposedly these lovely, pseudo lovely people, but they want war, they want conflict, and they care about climate change, but they're very happy for missiles to be flying left, right, and centre and pushing the world to nuclear war. I mean, that make sense.
Well, it's the latest thing brigade. The latest thing brigade are back. I've seen so many things over the last few days of people posting, Zelensky is some kind of absolute, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Churchill, not a big fan of killing people through famine, but still. He's this Churchillian leader. He's going to do this. He's the leader of the free world. You see it all the time. He's person of the year. And you just look at him and you're like, have you got any idea who this man is?
Yeah.
Honestly, he's a little cross-dressing puppet, right? In his little Action Man Primark freaking tracksuit, right? Which he wears all the time because he's playing a character, because he's an actor.
It's a costume, yeah.
It's a costume. And also, and I used a word which I won't repeat in this, but I said that only such and such words sign bombs. And there's a photo of Zelensky signing a bomb, right? Putting his name on it. It's going to get dropped on people and blow them up, right? And what I saw was quite a few people commenting on that, saying, well, basically, these people have invaded his country. He's basically, giving a little bit back. No. Those bombs he was signing were in a American arms factory, and those missiles he was signing were being sent to Israel to be dropped on kids in Gaza. So actually, it was nothing to do with Ukraine and protecting his own country. The guy is seriously twisted. And so to watch him being portrayed as this leader of if he's the leader of the free world, I'm out of it.
Yeah, 100%. It's like we've spoke about so many times, haven't we? People look at who's doing something, not what's being done, before deciding whether they support or whether they push against it. If you had Kim Jong-un, the leaders in Iran, Xi in China, any of those, Assad when he was in power, signing missiles that were going to be fired into areas of civilians, you would have had outcry. All this blue tick, all these, hashtag Me Too brigades, and sorry, not hashtag Me Too, hashtag he, her brigade, all that rubbish and all that, Ukraine flags in your bio and all that, be kind. That's what I was trying to say, not Me Too. Hashtag be kind lot would have been losing their minds over it. Yeah, because it's actually, no, this is a side we support. They're doing the same thing, but it's fine. Absolutely fine. No, drop bombs. Go for it. Sign them. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
What kind of twisted moral compass do you have to support any kind of conflict? Any kind of conflict.
Well, this is the point. It's people supporting it are not people on the front line. They're not people going to die. They're sat in their living room watching Bargain Hunt. But
is that still on?
But I don't know. I don't watch much telly. But in the end, it's their grandkids and their kids that will be sent to die. While all the politicians like Zippy and all the others that are making these so-called decisions, they're not going over the top. They're not on the front line. They're going to be sat watching this on a big screen in the safety of their little bunker somewhere. Honestly, it winds me up.
Yeah, it does. Well,
I'm a little bit flustered today, I've got to say, because I've read this stuff this morning. And once again, for his faults, which he has many, as we all do, and people will have an opinion on someone like Galloway because he splits the room on a lot of subjects. When it comes to war, he's right again, and he's making the point that actually, if you think the French are going to be there, you're having a laugh. That you think the Poles are going to be there, the Romanians are going to be there, the Italians are going to be there. Maloney has already basically massively backtracked on them having Italian troops on the ground. It's going to be the Brits. It's going to be young, working class, council estate lads with hardly any opportunities in life because they've been completely forgotten by the establishment. It's going to be them sent to die in the mud for BlackRock investors.
Well, that's again, just to finish on this point with the story, is that demographic of people you just described have just spent the last 2 decades been vilified, called racist, called thick, called toxic masculinity, all of those things. And now you want them to go and fight for you. So when you spoke earlier about morale of a country, if you think about the Second World War, so neither me or you were alive, but we have grandparents that told us about it, that there was a real sense of togetherness. There was a real sense of community still within the country, where people knew each other. You knew your neighbours, you spoke to your neighbours. And also a big point as well to do with the World War is immigration wasn't a thing in any nation. So generally the nation's indigenous population was the population. Whereas here, let's say for example, A good example is Australia because of the population. But if Australia went to war with China, there's about 6 million Chinese in Australia. So you could potentially then have literally fights on the street. It's not just on the battlefield. It's that conflict. Imagine if Britain went to war with the Muslim world. There's a lot of Muslims here in the UK. There could literally be warfare in the streets. And you've got the same here in Europe, where you're potentially going to be asking a group of people you've forgotten about, you've ignored, and let their communities rot to hell. You're going to ask them to stand on the front line. I don't see it.
No.
I don't see it.
No.
Well, look at the back.
I hope the lads say no.
Look at the backlash to when Sunak started talking about conscription.
Yeah.
Whenever that's floated out, and it's been floated out a lot in the last couple of years, conscription, isn't it? We may need conscription if we go to war.
Testing the population for it,
and they haven't got a great response, which is positive, and
which is encouraging. Yeah, and let's see how it goes. Honestly, it's ridiculous. And actually, on that subject, then moving on to the next story. So 600 migrants in one day crossed the channel yesterday. Now, I've said this for a while. I think they want us to watch the boats.
Yep.
Because they don't want us to watch the airports and they don't want us to watch the RAF bases and where the large numbers of people are actually being brought in. But 600 in one day have crossed in dinghies. As usual, they've forgotten the women and children.
Yeah. And their passports.
Yeah, of course. But it's all being incentivized completely because otherwise there would be no reason to cross the channel because when you're in northern France, you're already in a safe country. So this whole they're fleeing a war zone is absolute nonsense. And again, it goes back to destroying the country, which is the whole point. So you've destroyed the energy infrastructure. You're destroying farming and the ability to farm. You're attacking farmers, have been doing that for a long period of time, particularly now under the Labour government. Morale is on its backside. Public services are on their backside. Council tax is going up. Everything's going up. Everything's more expensive. And so then you throw into that more people that are coming into the country illegally, that don't speak the language. They don't have a job to go to. And then you put them in hotels where there's, homeless native Britons and homeless people that have served in the military sleeping in the doorway of hotels that you've filled with people that have come over on a dinghy, fighting age men every single time. And you just go again, well, it's another way of destroying the country. It destroys cohesion. It puts more strain on the services. The taxpayer money, if there's any left that hasn't been sent to Zelensky, is funding these people. Here's a mobile phone. Here's a meal card. And again, it kills morale. It
does, and I think it's you can break it down to a lot of areas of life where there's such a blatant example of unfairness. It eats at people. It disheartens you. It gets you down. And people that are sat struggling to pay the bills, worried about this energy bill increase in just a few weeks, worried about being able to put food on the table for their kids, working insane hours, potentially both people just to survive. People that are very close to the breadline, close to the street, or may have served in the military, or may have paid into the system their whole lives that now all of a sudden have fallen on hard times, potentially through no fault of their own. They're seeing this and going, hang on a minute. Yeah. How does this make any sense? And what's ridiculous is you get called a racist for saying that. I'd apply that to any single country. I wouldn't expect to go and live in Slovenia, for example, and get money from the state when I've never paid into that system, while people that have paid into the country their whole lives go hungry. It's not fair. And this is not about England, actually, is it? It's about every nation and basic fairness.
Yeah.
You're not going to, if you bring it down to a really simple level, if you've got kids, you're not going to let your kids go hungry while you take someone else's in. You're not. That's not going to happen. And essentially, it's the same principle.
Yeah. And it's one of them I look at, people talk about the great replacement theory. Oh, that's a far right conspiracy theory. Well, actually, if you're asking me to disbelieve the great replacement theory, you're asking me to ignore the evidence of my eyes and ears.
Yeah.
Because the reality is there. It's obvious. There's cities across this country that are already minority white. The country in general is going to be minority white probably within the next 20 years, and that's being optimistic. I think it will be sooner than that. And that's down to birth rates, obviously, massively. It's also down to massive rates of immigration. And this is just, the dinghies that we're, told to look at. Yeah. And you can see the country changing. Now, people could go, that's racist. Well, it's not racist to have an opinion and say, well, actually, I don't agree with that, because no other nation, and I say this to people, why is it only Western nations that are told they have to be multicultural?
Yeah.
Why is it?
100%.
And also, what is multicultural about large demographics of people coming in and taking over the country? I don't. How is what's the positive of that?
Yeah.
Because if they came over in a landing craft with a military emblem on it, it would be called an invasion. But you come over on a dinghy, oh no, it's fine. It's you can't say anything against it. Here's a mobile phone and a free meal ticket. Yeah. And it's there's a news story yesterday, and I laughed, but it's all meant to be done on purpose in terms of morale. Stonehenge, there's been a study. There's been a study. Who did it? It doesn't matter. There's been a study.
Yeah, don't worry about
Stonehenge was built by black people. There's no evidence for that, because where would you even begin to get evidence for that? But it's that way of saying to British people, there is no native Britain.
No,
you're not native to this nation. I hear it all the time. Britain doesn't have a native Britain. It's been invaded throughout history. Therefore, it's always changed as a demographic. So shut up, and we'll leave the borders open. It's honestly, it's mad. And then they want people to like you've said there. They want people that are now the disenfranchised, that are now the worst served by the nation. They want those people to then go and die to protect the nation. Well, what nation are you protecting?
Yeah, absolutely.
And just quickly, because I know I'm going off on one, but as an example, right? So I've just got back from Mexico. Now, when I landed in Mexico, the immigration was full of Mexicans, and I looked around and I went, okay, they're all Mexican and they're speaking Mexican, Spanish. Yeah. And you fly to bloody British, and you fly to other countries, and you go, They will. If you go to Iceland, the people working in immigration will be Icelandic, right? When we landed back in Heathrow, there wasn't one person there, right? I'm not exaggerating. There wasn't one that had English as a first language.
No.
And I looked around me and I was like, I believe we're all one as a human race, as a human family. But I was looking around me and I was going, but this isn't happening accidentally.
No, it's not. Same with America. When you go to the American embassy, unless you speak to an official, they're never They're not American. They're not. It's
extraordinary. But it's only Western nations, and it's only Western nations where you put the TV on and suddenly it's we need to tick boxes here. We need to tick boxes with every single person in this advert or every single person in this TV show. You go to Nigeria and do that. They wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't. And it's the same principle. You imagine going to, I'll tell you what, people that are, saying that we should be multicultural and that, everything should be embraced. Go to Saudi as a woman, don't wear a headscarf or a burqa. Tell them that it's wrong, X, Y, and Z. See how you get on.
It's honestly, it's ridiculous.
Britain for me, and this is what really winds me up, Britain is the most welcoming and most accepting society and same with you, travelled to a lot of countries around the world. Western countries are the most accepting countries of whatever you want to be. Race, religion, gender, sexuality, pretty much whatever you want to be. There's exceptions, of course. You got a country like America of 300 million people, 50 states. There's going to be pockets where there's people that maybe don't think the same. But the vast, vast majority, you just do what the hell you want. You live your life. Yeah, you constantly, same here in Britain, you're constantly told you're racist, you're homophobic, you're transphobic if you dare to have an opinion that is not the system's. Well,
yeah. Well, I'm surprised it wasn't.
I'm
surprised it wasn't transgender folk that built Stonehenge, to be honest. Maybe that study will come out next week.
Yeah, maybe next year, yeah. Right. We've got a big story, literally a big story. So we've talked a lot about the attack on health. That's been so obvious for decades now, the attack on health in so many different ways, whether that's the attack on mental health and the increase in stress and anxiety that we're seeing with people with it, and obviously the increase in hyper-processed foods that, don't worry, RFK is going to sort out, guys. We'll be fine on that. And also the expense and inaccessibility of organic, grass-fed, biodynamic foods led by attacks on farmers, red tape for farmers, supermarkets ripping people off so they can't even produce the food they want to anymore, etc., etc. Anyway, this is a study that's come out. More than half of all adult children... Sorry, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Mate,
let me start again.
Said people in Mexico spoke Mexican. There's no winners today, ladies and gentlemen.
More than half of all adults and a third of children, teenagers and young people around the world are predicted to be overweight or obese by 2050. Now, that stat alone is terrifying, but it's also misskewed because that's taken into consideration the entire world. Obviously, there is large parts of the world where there is still famine, there is still a real struggle with food supply and people starving, they're included in that statistic. So if you actually don't take this as the whole world for a second and focus on what you would call more economically developed nations, so Western nations, China, India, Australia, countries like that, that stat is actually at 78%, right? If you remove the continent of Africa and you move the continent of South America and you move large swathes of Asia, apart from India and China, that takes that to 78%, that statistic. That alone is terrifying. So that means, on average, 8 out of 10 people over the age of 25 will be obese. Now, this story classes obese as a BMI higher than 27, which, to be honest, actually, anything over about 25 ain't great.
Yeah, I mean,
so
BMI is skewed.
Well, yeah, I'm obese on BMI, but anyway.
Exactly, putting my sort of old PT hat on, it is skewed, but it applies to most people.
It's a guide.
Most people don't have a large amount of muscle, basically. So it is.
Thanks, mate. Yeah. Take that. It's a guide. Body fat's a better one, but it's a guide. Yeah. The point is, if this rise gets set to continue for another, so 2050, so another 25 years. That's a whole nother generation. Yeah. So the people here over 25 is classed as an adult. So the youngest of those aren't even born yet or are being born this year. And they're already, apparently, this is what's going to happen. So at what point is this going to be a major news story? At what point is this going to be something that is discussed by prime ministers, by presidents, by world leaders, by health experts?
Well,
at what point?
It won't be.
Because if you're talking about countries economically struggling, the push on and pressure on healthcare systems caused by obesity is enormous. Type 2 diabetes alone is a pandemic. We were chatting last week, weren't we, when we were cycling, about when you were doing PT and you were advised, mate, take a type 2 diabetes referral thing, you'll clean up in a few years. Well, they are now, because it's an absolute pandemic, and it is type 2 diabetes, heart diseases as well. And the thing is, people talk about, the life expectancy has gone up, but has life quality gone up? Because if you're struggling with those things, in America now, about 50% of people over 25 are on one or more medications daily. Yeah, that's terrifying. Yeah. Absolutely terrifying. Ka-ching. And it's clearly by design. And, we see people all the time asking for solutions. What are solutions? It's all negative. Give us an answer. Well, here's a really easy one. Stop eating highly processed foods. It's so simple. If you walk into a supermarket and just go in with the pure idea that I'm not going to buy anything that my grandparents wouldn't recognise. Really easy way to start. Because half the foods in there, our grandparents wouldn't even begin to go, what the hell is that? The hell is that? Well, that's luminous blue. Why are you eating that? But it's now common practice. And, I follow a few health influencers online, and they post some interesting stuff most days. And one of the key ones is, which is really interesting, if you eat steak and eggs for breakfast, you said someone, I have steak and eggs for breakfast. What, a bit weird. But you have 114 gram of sugar frappuccino from Starbucks and a donut, you're normal. That's fine. That's what everyone does. Yeah. That's what's happened. We've become so backwards on what we think is healthy. And like you said earlier about, for me to believe that I'm going to have to ignore what I'm seeing with my own eyes, you can see. You go to obviously as parents, you can see when you go to a soft play, you can see when you go to the swimming pool, when you go out to the farms with the kids. You look around at other parents and you think, I don't remember it being like this when I was a kid. It's obscene now. It's absolutely extraordinary. And the same with kids as well.
It is
see a
hard
lot of
to tell
overweight kids.
Sometimes the difference between the parent and the bouncy castle at the soft play. This is clearly planned. Of course it is. When you look at take America, for instance, you've got the massive corporations, your Coca-Cola company and all these sorts, that lobby the hell out of the FDA, the Food Standards Agency, to be allowed to put certain things in their food that is rubbish, but it's cheaper to produce. And so they've got a racket going on, because what happens is the food production corporations lobby the FDA to be allowed crap into the food. The FDA say, of course you can, son. That makes people fat and ill. And then the pharmaceutical company, which is in bed with these same corporations, that's in bed with the FDA and lobbying them as well, goes, all right, thanks. And they clean up on the afters.
Customer for life.
Customer for life. So that's part of it. Another part of it, to keep repeating myself, going back to what we spoke about with the last two stories, is what population would be easier to control? A fat, lazy, ill, depressed, no motivation, no get up and go, literally sometimes, no drive. That, popping pills up to their backsides, that is the population that's easy to control, because that population is not going to stand up, because the ankles won't have it half the time. That is not going to stand up and go, do you know what? I'm not having it.
The big thing as well, which isn't discussed at all really, is fertility and how much this attacks fertility, because testosterone rates in men are absolutely plummeting, like it's going out of fashion. So, people alive today in their 80s have, higher testosterone levels than 20-year-old men. That's the point. No, not everyone, obviously there's exceptions, but that's, I think, I did an interview with Dr. Christine Northrup, who's a bit of an expert in this area, and she was putting those statistics on the table, and it's absolutely extraordinary. You've got World War II veterans that have higher testosterone levels than people that should be in the prime of their lives. It's absolutely astonishing, the amount of women that you're seeing with fertility issues and cycle issues, caused by a number of things, not least the COVID vaccine, but food and genetically modified foods. Because what does genetically modified mean? It means it's genetically modified. So therefore, it's going to genetically modify you. So it's not just the weight. That's an obvious one. It's an obvious, one you can see and observe. But what's that doing inside? What's that doing to your cells? What's that doing to your organs? How hard is your liver having to work? How hard is your kidneys having to work to get rid of the crap that's in there? I don't also, I'm not going to speak as an expert on this because I haven't looked into the numbers, but the explosion in prostate cancer in men, again, what does the prostate do? Well, it helps flush out crap. Putting more crap in, you're going to have more problems. So there's so many things you can look at and start to put down to the processed food diet, but I don't see any calls for the processed food industry to face repercussions. I don't see it to change, and money going to organic farming, money going to support people eating healthier foods, subsidies for organic farms, subsidies for local community farming and stuff like that. Nope, it's all going to war, Zelensky, climate change, and ridiculous quotas and whatever, and it's just going into the NHS to do what? Fill people with more drugs, treat more people. Yeah. We should have a healthcare industry internationally that is, hopefully, ideally, surgeons sat around with absolutely nothing to do. That would be the sign of a positive healthcare system, because people aren't getting sick. Yeah. It's no claim to fame that more people are being treated than ever before.
Well, this is the thing. I remember when we made the Body of Evidence film, talking to Callie Means about the fact that in America they celebrate the fact that they've got so many new children's cancer hospitals, and one of them is so huge you can see it from space, and it's like, isn't it amazing?
No,
it's really not. It's really not. Build a theme park for kids that you can see from space. I can get on board with that. Cancer hospitals, not so much. But I actually, when you spoke about this story earlier, I think you were the same. I was surprised that it was only 50%.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the 50% is over 25, so that doesn't include children. That statistic at the moment.
See, the kids upset me the most because
they're not eating their own dinner, cooking their own dinner.
Kids not cooking their own dinner. Kids not doing the food shop. Kids not prepping it. Kids not making their own packed lunch to take to school. The parents are doing that.
Yep. But then,
what's going on?
We are examples, and we are products of our environment. I guarantee. The parents that both work out, eat well, look after themselves don't have overweight children. Just going to put it out there. I would highly suggest that's probable, with maybe the odd exception. I don't agree with Katie Hopkins on many things, but when she sat down and said overweight kids are usually followed by overweight parents, that is true. That is very true. Mainly because if you're not overweight as a parent, you look after yourself, you're aware of the damage that could be doing to your kids, so therefore you don't let it happen. Like, I remember I was on holiday a few years ago with Beth, right before we had kids, and there was a family sat next to us by the swimming pool. It was a mum and a dad and their mum's family, like her dad and her mum. And their son was a big lad. The mum was a big lad. The mum was a big woman, sorry. The dad was honestly probably 8 stone wet. Ridiculous.
Oh, you see those couples.
And the son wanted an ice cream, and his dad went, 5 lengths of the pool. 5 lengths of the pool, and I'll get you an ice cream, mate. The kid kicked off. The mum, the grandparents were having a go at the dad about how that's really harsh. You're on holiday. Why? The kid's over, and he wasn't, puppy fat. He was quite a big lad. The dad's helping him out.
So how did it end?
He did 5 lengths because the dad held his ground, to be fair.
Well done, Dad.
So well done. But yeah. Right. Final story. because we're going to go over today. So, good news story.
Yeah, I don't actually know what this story is.
Yeah, so those of you that watch all week will know that on Fridays for the last few weeks, when it's been me and Rich, we've taken it in turns to put a good news story out there. The other person doesn't know what the story is, so reaction's quite genuine and trying to bring some positivity, because we get accused of being negative. I don't think knowledge is negative. I think not knowing things and therefore being blind and led off the garden path, you're off the cliff before you realise you've been led there, is negative. But this is to point out that there is some amazing things going out there, and there is some amazing people out there. And this story, based on what we've said about healthcare and stuff, there is some amazing people in healthcare industries around the world. It's not all bad. So this is the headline from here in America. Heart transplant girl misses father-daughter dance until the hospital that she's in came to the rescue. So this girl, she's 10 years old. She was waiting for heart transplant surgery, right? Missed out on going to a father-daughter dance, which is quite a big thing in America in primary school. So this girl was born in 2014 with a number of heart defects, had open heart surgery when she was just 6 days old. Jeez. She had a number of issues. She spent more than 200 days in hospital waiting for a heart transplant. Anyway, she wanted to do this father-daughter dance with her dad in February for like a Valentine's Day event they had at their school. She couldn't go because she was in hospital. So as you'll see, we put up this picture now, and I'll show you. The hospital decorated the entire ward and brought her dad in and made a whole thing for her to do that father-daughter dance with him and her, just in their own kind of disco created.
That's
the
lovely.
hospital didn't need to do that. They've done that. Yeah, this is a time to shout out to the people that have done that. There is some amazing people in healthcare industries. It's the way they're run that is dark, but that's just a really beautiful story and a really amazing moment that she'll never forget. Her dad will never forget, and I think it's important to highlight these things because there is some amazing things happening out there. There really is. There's a lot of darkness, but you can't break the individual spirit of people, I don't think. They'll try, and they really do try, and it does get very challenging at times to stay positive. But there's still some amazing things happening that we need to highlight and talk about, and it gives you that little bit of oomph and a little bit of motivation to keep going. Because, you read something like that, it definitely makes you feel warm and fluffy. And for those of you... It does. Why?
Yeah, it makes me feel warm. I don't feel fluffy.
Come on. It's beautiful, mate. But for those of you interested, there's a website which I found called goodnewsnetwork.org. So I'll put the link to that in the description. If you're ever needing a pick-me-up, that website's fantastic. It's got stories from all over the world like this, community-based stories, culture-based stories of people doing amazing work and amazing stuff in different parts of the world and in different contexts, which is always good for a little pick-me-up. I tend to go to it most mornings after I've read the headlines of the day.
Do you know what would be a really good, an even better pick-me-up as well? Is to actually go and do something like that.
Yep.
So people, like you've mentioned, and we spoke about it yesterday, this lack of solutions. I need the solutions while you outsource your own solutions to an orange-faced guy. But we can be our own solutions. What did you do today? And I'm asking myself this as well. What did you do today which made someone's life better? What did you do that made someone smile or laugh or feel good about themselves? And if the answer is, well, nothing, well, then tomorrow, why not do that to one person? Why not make a nice remark to someone in the supermarket or whatever, who then goes away from there going with a little bit of a spring in their step.
Absolutely.
And then they might do something nice, or they might, have that little bit more confidence to do something that they wouldn't have done, which makes their life better, which makes their kids' lives better, which makes everyone's lives better around them. And then suddenly, by doing one little thing, it's literally snowballed into something absolutely incredible. And if everyone did that, and I'm considering myself in that as well, what can I do today to make someone's life better? We'd have half a chance.
We would. Heather Small, mate, what have you done today to make yourself feel proud?
Heather Small, jeez Louise.
Great song.
That's a blast from the past.
Great song. I blast that out. I blasted that out for about the last 2 kilometres when I did my 50k. That's what got me over the line. Speaking of that, this is the last episode of the week that's going to be me and Gareth. It'll be Gaz and Rich tomorrow because Thursday and Friday we're off on our cycle, mate. 200 miles over 2 days, well, about 220 miles actually, over 2 days. Get down to the Isle of Wight for a nice party and celebration for what would have been our sister Kerry's 50th birthday. We're, obviously it's going to be an emotional couple of days, but we're raising money for an amazing cause. For those of you that have donated already and shared it, thank you so much. We're at about $5,500 at the moment. We're going to really try and get to 10. We're going to make a documentary of it. We've got a couple of people from the team following us, so that'll be entertaining. Unfortunately, they weren't with us on Friday when we did a test run when Gareth absolutely stacked it, which was hilarious.
I did not feel warm and fluffy at that point.
No, I did the typical. Are you all right? Good, I can laugh now. Then
I went flying.
it could have. If that was a road, it would have been.
If it was a
ugly.
road, I'd have been brown bread. But luckily,
yeah.
it was like a muddy path. But yes.
But we're starting 7 a.m. from Leicester Royal Infirmary on Thursday. We'll post plenty of clips through the day on Instagram stories and on Twitter. And we've got a documentary we're working on as well, which will come out in April. So once again, we'll put the link in the description for that Just Giving page. Thanks again for your support. Once we get past when the donations are finished and the film's out, we'll start share obviously what we're doing with that money, which is going to go and help people who have been injured by the COVID vaccine, which I know everyone watching this will be a cause you're very happy to support. So thank you very much. And you'll be back with Rich tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
I will be back. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, today's training was brought to you by the brand new range of Ickonic coffee. Head over to shop.ickonic.com and use the code
Trending for 10% off.
There you go. I went all smash in nicely then.
Nice. Have a great day, everybody.
See you tomorrow.
I speak
Mexican.